Hey everybody, it's Anna J. Wellner with Indie Author Chat. And today I am so pleased to have on the show S.P. Brown, who is the author of 4 books that you've already released. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am a full-time academic. I teach at Mississippi State University in the famous town of Starkville, Mississippi. That famous college town among the SEC schools. I also, as Anna says, by night, I am a fictionalist. I'm a novelist, and I've got 4 books, working on a 5th right now, finishing out one of my trilogies. And I found that as I hit middle age several years ago, things got a little boring in academics, so I wanted to spice things up a little bit and started writing fiction. And I've been enjoying that ever since.
That's awesome. Yeah, we definitely have that in common. I do most of my writing at night because I have a little one that demands attention all day long. So when the sun goes down, the laptop comes up. So all of your books are rooted in paranormal themes. Which of the books that you have, the 4 that you have out now, which one is your favorite? Do you have a favorite?
Wow. You know, I think that is probably where I'll answer that. I probably don't have a favorite. The trilogy was my original conception when I first started writing fiction. It was my original story that I came up with to try to pen and to see if I actually could do this. I always tell the story that anybody can write a novel, but to write a good novel is a challenge. And so I had never taken a creative writing course in college. I mean, I had to take English classes, but never a creative writing course. But I am an academic, so I have a lot of writing in my career anyway, and I put out textbooks and numerous scientific articles. But I must say that all that writing, the hardest thing I ever did was to write that first novel and to try to make it good. So which one is my favorite? I don't think I have a favorite. I'm trying to finish up my trilogy right now, so I'm really into that story, 2 of which have been published, and I'm finishing the 3rd right now. But the trilogy was not the first thing I put out. The first book, my debut, came out in 2017, and a book called The Legacy, and it is a paranormal thriller. So I fall within that paranormal scope of things in one way, shape, or form, but I also can be classified as contemporary fantasy. Things like that is what I like to write and read, although I read pretty widely. So I don't have a favorite. Sorry to disappoint you in that question, but I guess they're all my favorite because I treat them all as my sons and daughters. And
we get attached to our books because we spend so much time with them.
I will give a plug to my publisher right now, though. I write for Black Opal Books, and they're an independent publisher. They're not one of the big, or attached to one of the big 5 New York City publication firms. But they're good. They've been very good to me, and they publish my works. Black Opal Books.
Black Opal Books Publishing. Okay. Well, so I am curious where you draw inspiration for your books. Have you ever had a paranormal experience?
Yeah, I saw that question you were going to ask, and if you would delve into my website, and I'll just call it out right now, spbrownbooks.com.
And the link.
spbrownbooks.com.
And I'll have the link, don't worry, in the description along with the rest.
Okay. Well, if you look at my blog posts from, I think, a couple of years ago, I interviewed a person on there, and we talk about that. We talk about the paranormal experiences that we have had. So to answer your question, let me just say that as I talk about that in that blog post I'm referring to, I go back to my mother's strange experience.
Okay.
This is a little bit of my personal family history. My mother, and I mentioned this in that blog post, so I've even talked to my sister about this, but my mother had a little bit of a strange deal where if one of her children got hurt, it could be a minor thing that all children complain about, like a hurt thumb or mommy, I got hurt. And she would literally take her thumb and rub it over whatever body part was thought to be injured, and while mumbling some things under her breath. So now I'm not saying that we got healed by that. It was a peculiar thing that she did. I always thought, though, that it was sort of strange. I never talked to her. She's been dead a long time, but I never talked to her about it. I did talk to my sister about it once several years ago after I started writing novels, and she remembered that, and she didn't have any insights for me. But my own paranormal experiences, my wife and I have sometimes, is that we have a very weak, very sort of strange, sort of what I would describe as a precognition that is not anything super powerful. I wouldn't describe it that way, but we could know something is coming up, and a few seconds later it would occur, and it's not anything that I can plan for or say, okay, the stock market is going to crash February 1st, 2021. It's not anything like that. It's very personal, very within my own personal sphere.
Kind of like an intuition, like an inside feeling that you just know.
Mm-hmm. And it's not that far in advance. It's like in the next footfall that I'm taking as I walk, I know something is coming up. I mean, I call it paranormal.
I'm getting chills.
Pardon?
I'm getting chills.
Yeah, I write about that in that blog post. If any of your listeners want to go take a look at my site and
absolutely.
And I was interviewing Luna Celis, who's a part of the Wolfpack authors group on Twitter as well, and she's a devotee sort of that sort of thing. I'm not really. I don't mean to give the impression that I'm some type of woo type, even though I'm wearing a Doctor Strange T-shirt right now.
I love the T-shirt, by the way. I was going to mention that.
I am a practicing Christian, and so I don't see this as being outside the realm of common everyday Christianity. But there it is. There's my unique paranormal experience. My wife participates in it. Sometimes she notices things. Sometimes when, oh, you were about to say that, weren't you? I said, yeah.
Oh, that is really interesting. The story with your mom is very interesting. I'm sorry that you didn't get the chance to ask her more about it, because it almost seems like she had something that was maybe passed down to her, or
yeah, she died pretty young. I mean, I'm in my 60s right now, and she died when I was 22, and I was doing other things at 22.
Yeah,
Uh,
I understand.
it wasn't in my wheelhouse at the time to try to investigate a little further about her thinking along those lines.
Right. Well, I've always been fascinated by the supernatural and paranormal. I've visited some haunted, supposedly haunted places. In Houston, there's the Spaghetti Warehouse that has a history of being haunted. And in Port Aransas, Texas, I actually stayed in not the room, which is, I believe it's the Roosevelt room, but I actually stayed in the Tarpon Inn, which has a history of paranormal activity. And I sweet talked one of the ladies into letting me into the room, and I absolutely felt a palpable, I don't know if you would call it a presence, but the air almost felt different walking inside that room. So I'm a complete believer that there are things out there that are unexplainable.
I am a scientist. I'm a university professor and a scientist, and but I also am a practicing Christian. I believe in the supernatural world. And my first book, my debut novel, The Legacy, if you're interested in ghost stories, just say this about The Legacy. It is a paranormal thriller. It can also be classified as a political thriller. So I have terrorists and ghosts in the same novel.
Okay. No, I was immediately drawn to that one because I love the cover with the house.
To tell you a little bit about the scope of the story and how it's mixed genre, I have a scene from the Situation Room of the White House in that book. So yes, it's mixed genre, paranormal thriller. My protagonist there is a 27-year-old dude with a legacy that he's trying to avoid desperately.
Okay, you've got me interested, absolutely. And like I said, I love the cover. It immediately drew me in whenever I saw it, the haunted house.
The house, Black Manor, is a character within the novel.
I love that. And the third factor is the newest book that you have out, which is, by the way, the second book in the Stonehenge Chronicles. That's the trilogy that we were talking about. And can you tell us a little bit about that series and what it's about?
I can. I'm currently finishing that series. I'm writing the final book of the trilogy.
I was going to ask if there was a third coming.
Yeah, of course, it's a trilogy, so I've got to finish. This was the original story I came up with years ago when I sat down to was totally bored. My wife will tell you I was experiencing a midlife crisis, and I was bored with academics, and I didn't want to leave, of course, but I'd written tons of scientific papers and college textbooks, and just got bored with that kind of writing. So I said, you know what? I'm going to sit down and challenge myself to see if I can produce a novel. And I came up with a story. I had some inspiration for that story from the work of J.K. Rowling. Now, everybody knows who J.K. Rowling is.
Of course.
Through her Harry Potter series and other things she's done since then. And one of the things that always fascinated me in the Harry Potter series is that she wrote about this underground world that the Muggles, you and I, didn't know about because we were kept from knowing. They were hidden, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that fascinated me that she never realizes in her story is that she never discussed the origin of her witches and wizards. She doesn't place in the books where they came from. So I'm pretty much fascinated with origin stories. So I sat down purposefully to design a story world where I would investigate in my underground covert people, eventually where they came from. And I wanted to tie it to Stonehenge, because Stonehenge had always fascinated me. There's a lot of work on Stonehenge, scientific work, who built it, where it came from, yet
What it means,
what
why
it
it's even
means,
there.
why it's there, stuff like that. A lot of work that we still don't know. It's
Right.
still pretty much mysterious. We know it has something to do with the sun and the moon because of its configuration.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to investigate it. So at the end of my trilogy is in your face, Stonehenge. It's called the Stonehenge Chronicles. Now,
Right.
it's not, Stonehenge is of ancient origin, right? It goes back at least 3,500 BC. But my novels are contemporary. I don't do any historical fiction or anything like that.
Gotcha.
But the backstory of my trilogy goes back to ancient times. And I'm writing right now a discovery of the origin of Stonehenge in my follow-up book to the Third Factor. So the Third Factor came out last year, 2020, in March. The initial book of the Stonehenge Chronicles came out in 2018. It's a story called Veiled Memory. And its protagonist, Dr. Madeline Allen, is an academic historian. She's a Celtic historian. Her specialty is Celtic history. And if you know anything about the Celts, we're into England and Ireland and Scotland and all those areas. And there you are right into my story. But she is a Celtic historian, teaches at Cornell University in upstate New York, and she has a secret. And you need to read the book to discover her secret.
You're gonna leave us on a cliffhanger there. Yeah. With the secret.
Now her secret is discovered a little bit more in the Third Factor, and I'm really exploring it now in the third follow-up and the end of the trilogy.
I have to read these because I did do the DNA test, and a lot of it's 50% Scotland and 50% United Kingdom is what came back. So I'm really fascinated, and I haven't really delved into a lot of history, but I need to, and I want to, and I am fascinated by it. So I do.
If you go to Scotland right now, the second most common surname in Scotland is Brown.
Really? Okay.
That's my heritage, but I'm from South Louisiana, so most of my heritage is French. So, but the Browns snuck in there.
See, I was adopted, so I never knew until last year.
Okay.
When I never knew until a couple of years ago, whenever I took the DNA test, exactly what heritage I had in my DNA. And so I was really surprised by some of the things that I found out upon meeting my biological family, which I did only over the phone because it was in the summer of last year. And
oh, good for you.
Really,
are you excited to meet them in person?
When I'm able to, yes, I am very much excited to. That has not happened yet because I found out during the midst of all of this. So I haven't had that opportunity yet.
Right.
But
right.
I wanted to ask, because you are in the halls of academia, do you have someone there that you rely on, maybe someone in the history department or in the anthropology department that you go to every once in a while and say, do you have a secret resource there?
Yeah. Well, good question. And I will tell you yes, but the department will surprise you. And so let me
Okay.
get into the story a little bit more because the Stonehenge Chronicles, while it can be classified as a contemporary fantasy, can also, if you look at the continuum from full-blown fantasy to full-blown science fiction, the Stonehenge
Hmm.
Chronicles will fall right about in the middle. It's not fully fantasy and it's not fully science fiction, but I do have
Okay.
science fiction-y things in the story. And the first scene of my first novel, Veiled Memory, takes place at the McDonald Observatory in Southwest Texas. It's a real place in the Davis Mountains of Southwest Texas, where they built this observatory in the 1920s. It's part of the University of Texas at Austin system.
I was going to say the name sounds kind of familiar.
Yeah, and it's from the astronomy department. So I do have somebody here in the physics department because of part of my plot deals with the moon. You will find that the moon runs pretty significant in all my stories. They are all can be classified as paranormal. I view paranormal as an overarching term, even
Hmm.
more than fantasy and science fiction. So
True.
the moon plays a big part, and I did have to consult, especially for as we got into the plot more in the third factor, book 2 of the series. I had to consult a physicist here at Mississippi State to make sure I don't write hardcore science fiction. In hardcore science fiction, you have to make, even though it's fiction, you have to make the science pretty plausible.
Right.
And it can't be too far out, or you won't have people who read hardcore science fiction will leave you if there's not at least some science that they can see can make it possible. So I'm not there, but I wanted to make sure what I was doing with the moon could seem
Plausible.
And we know that the moon, for instance, I'll delve into it a little bit. Part of my plot has the moon drawing closer to the Earth. The moon is in an elliptical orbit around the Earth. It's got an apogee and a perigee.
Yes.
But it's moving away from the Earth very, 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 very gradually, only like about a centimeter or two a year. That's measurable, by the way, because in one of the Apollo missions that started in what, 1969, something like that. When I was a kid, I watched the moon landing. In those early Apollo missions, they planted on the moon what they call some mirrors, retro reflectors. And what they now from the McDonald's reflectors on the moon in order to get a very accurate within a couple of centimeters distance between the Earth and the moon. And so that's part of my plot. The moon is not gradually, but very substantially and suddenly drawing closer to the Earth. And will spell out for the third book, which I'm writing right now.
I love that you explain that because I am a big fan of Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'm fascinated by astrophysics, physics in general. As a kid, my dad always he tried to explain to me a lot of the theories of conservation of mass and yes, conservation of mass and energy, and then a lot of the theorems that Einstein came up with for the possibilities of time travel. and multiverses. So as a kid, I was actually explained a lot of this stuff, and I found science very fascinating growing up. And I still do. I may not be able to understand the math because math, oh Lord, math, I'm not good with math.
Yeah. Well, let me just tell you, having heard you say that, you will love reading the Stonehenge Chronicles, but I won't say anything more than that.
I'm excited.
I'll give away the overall plot. My goal at the end of the trilogy is that you will know why Stonehenge was built, who built it, and what it does.
Those are a lot of promises. And I love whenever authors make big promises to their readers because we can always expect something mind-blowing at the end.
I hope so. I hope I'm skilled enough plotter to get that done. But if you have an overarching plot that has to sustain 3 novels. So
and that is difficult because I'm on my 3rd as well, and it is difficult to maintain a consistent overarching plot through 3 books.
Yeah. So there will be a completion to it. Going back to J.K. Rowling, I mean, she had an overarching plot for 7 books, and it was very. I read her
ambitious.
I read her books to my daughters when they were young, and she pulled it off. I mean, that last book was very exciting, and she pulled it off. And so she was one of my inspirations for getting into fiction. I had many. I mean, I read widely. I read John Grisham and courtroom stuff. I read police procedurals, Michael Connelly, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
I read paranormal stuff. Jim Butcher, I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I'm not.
The Dresden Files. If
yes.
Paranormal, urban fantasy, you need to be reading Jim Butcher.
Okay.
I'll only say that. So I read widely, and I write basically mixed genre, all with a paranormal flair, though.
I think with paranormal, I was just talking with someone last night, actually. I think with anything that has to deal with paranormal, you're right. It is sort of up there where there are multiple different genre categories that can fall under the paranormal umbrella. So we sort of have to kind of narrow that down a little bit to what it is exactly that our books are about.
Yeah.
So, well, I really do thank you for coming on and talking with me today. And I'm going to ask the question that I ask all independent authors, especially independent authors who have multiple books that are out. Do you have advice for us in the writing community? One, independent author, 2, another, things that you've learned over time the hard way that
Okay. I do have.
That you can pass along some of your wisdom.
Yeah, I do have. The basic advice everybody needs to take is, and me included, is if you want to be a writer, you have to be a reader first. And you have to read widely. You can't develop your craft in a vacuum, right? And read within the types of genres you want to write in. I mean, I write mixed genres, so I'm reading all over the place. But you really can't produce a good novel unless you've read 1,000 novels, so you read widely. Also, as you're writing, once you complete a project, have people you trust and hopefully, to be a beta reader. I think beta readers, somebody who will read your work and be very critical. Mm-hmm. Thick skin. You can't get your feelings hurt. And if you can develop 2 or 3 good beta readers, that's going to make your work better. All have it you need to have it too.
I absolutely agree, and find someone that is in the same genre that or close to the same genre that you write to help you critique your work. And when you're looking for beta readers, find beta readers that are your target demographic. That's one thing
Yes.
that I stress, because it's not going to help you as a paranormal author to reach out to a romance group and ask for beta readers. It's just
No.
not.
Other than that, my only other advice is decide what you are. Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I'm a pantser.
I'm a pantser too. I write by the seat of my pants, and I let the story take over and the characters start writing it for me. I just got to get my head in their heads, and they take over.
It's exciting because
I see an end to a story.
yes,
I don't know how to get there necessarily though, unless I start writing.
you and me both. And it is surprising how your characters will make some choices for you while you're writing that you otherwise, if you were a plotter, you wouldn't have necessarily put that down as as something to hit, as a key thing to hit. And I think
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I think that's part of what makes writing for me fun, is being an unconstrained pantser.
I tried to be a plotter.
I did too.
I read
in the beginning.
John Grisham literally wrote a paragraph for every scene in his entire novel before he sat down to begin the novel. He had every scene written out in a paragraph. I tried, but you got to know all the details ahead of time, right? I tried to do that, and I just got so bogged down. I just could not do it. I have to get started, and I have to let it develop on the fly, or it's going nowhere.
I absolutely, I can relate. So, yeah, guys, all of the links to the blog that we talked about earlier, and then your author page on Amazon, everything, and your website as well, is going to be in the description below. So make sure to check out those links. And I'm going to go. I've already checked out the blog, and guys, you definitely want to read some of the stuff that's in there, because it will give you goosebumps and chills.
Okay, Anna. Well, thanks for the opportunity, and
yes,
meeting you, and
thank you
too, and it's a pleasure to meet your acquaintance.
Absolutely, guys, and everyone out there, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you again soon.